Hi, everyone. I hope this message finds each of you so very well. I'm speaking to you from my studio in West Orange, New Jersey, and I could not be more delighted to have the pleasure of interviewing Andrew Hall, the co-founder of No Story Lost, who has a passion for storytelling, connection, and preserving legacies. Some stories are too precious to fade into time, and for Andrew and his cousin Jeremy Bryant, their grandfather's storytelling was exactly that, a treasure of wisdom, humor, and life lessons that deserve to be preserved. Their family often spoke about writing down his stories before they were lost, but it wasn't until one pivotal moment that Andrew and Jeremy decided to act. They sat with their grandfather, listened intently, and carefully transcribed his words. It was then that they realized that the true weight of what they had captured, not just memories, but it was a precious legacy. That experience led them to create No Story Lost, a service dedicated to transforming cherished family narratives into beautifully crafted coffee table books, ensuring that the voices of loved ones will continue to echo across generations. I'm looking forward to talking with Andrew, who is joining us from Vancouver, British Columbia, about his journey walking away from the corporate world to build something truly meaningful alongside his cousin, the unique ways No Story Lost captures the voices and wisdom of those we cherish, and how memories live on through their beautifully designed memorial books. Andrew will also share his insights on what it means to live a remarkable life and how No Story Lost is able to foster comfort, connection, and healing for families through the power of storytelling. Hi there, and welcome to the Grief and Rebirth podcast. I'm your host, author and trauma survivor Irene Weinberg, here to encourage you wherever you are in your healing journey. In each episode, I chat with incredible grief and trauma specialists, healers, mediums, and celebs, as well as remarkable people who have inspiring healing stories to share. If you're looking for a podcast that's both uplifting and inspiring, you've found it. Let us help you find your joy in life. Hey, Andrew. A heartfelt welcome to Grief and Rebirth podcast.
Hello, happy to be here, and thanks for the very thorough and generous introduction.
So my pleasure. As I like to tell you and our audience that I really like people to know who they're listening to, because, you're not just some kind of random guy popping up. There's a lot to you. They should know about that before they hear what you've got to say. So I want to
We're
start.
more than just our job titles, right?
Right. You're more than just your, absolutely. And there's a lot there, a lot of layers there. So I want to start, speaking of your biggest layer, is your grandfather. And I know that you had a very challenging process of documenting his story. You eventually, through your own path, meandered from a role in accounting, and then you worked for a nonprofit, and then you started this venture with your cousin. You want to tell us about your grandfather and how this all took place in your life? I'm sure when you first started out as a kid, you never thought you'd have a business like this and that you would be working with people like this.
No, yeah, it's really strange how you really have no idea as a kid where you're going to end up, and the best laid plans always meander anyway. So,
Right.
yes, my cousin is my best buddy in the world. We don't live in the same city anymore, but we grew up together in the same city, and so we're on the same side of the family, and we had one grandfather in common. So we heard all throughout our childhoods. We heard all of the stories. We'd always have him singing songs, reading out poems, telling jokes, elbowing you in the ribs, either physically or metaphorically. He was the total prankster. And yeah, throughout our childhood, like you said, we heard our families say, someone's got to write these stories down. Grandpa was probably in his 70s at the time, but someone's got to write these down before they're gone. Then fast forward, like you said, we got dream corporate jobs. Then Jeremy, my cousin, and I quit those corporate jobs at 23 to start a nonprofit, which we ran for 9 years.
What was the nonprofit about?
So it was called Meal Share, and we would partner with restaurants. And if someone bought a meal share item, we would provide one meal to a child in need. So a buy one, give one program for food. That's a whole other hour-long podcast, but that was an amazing journey. And during that time, grandpa's aging back in our hometown, and we went back and visited. And here we were hearing the same thing over and over. Someone's got to write these down. And off he is telling stories that no one's capturing. And so, at age 27, 28, whatever we were, we said, okay, we've heard this enough times. No one's getting off their butts and actually doing this. So we tried. We thought we could, pull together a biography. So we sat and interviewed him. I've got fun photos of us sitting with him in his living room and asking him to retell his stories, and obviously caught lots of new ones too. And yeah,
He must
just
have
an
had a
amazing.
blast, by the way. He probably loved sharing with
He
you.
was such a talker, and I'm sure it must be special to share it with your grandkids, but yeah, he loved it too. So we finally captured some rough audio, and over the following months, we pulled it together, and it's a humble book, but we got the first version done. It's, as you can see, pretty thin. It doesn't have everything. And yeah, like you said, we kind of learned the hard way. This was no easy feat to pull together a book, but the thread between the two businesses we ran together was, we were in corporate jobs and we thought we want to run businesses that make the world better. So with our nonprofit and then with No Story Lost, how can we make the world better through business? So yeah, we struggled through like, okay, we have audio. What do we do next? I guess we'll transcribe it. Then what? Then we need to turn it into a manuscript. Okay, how do we add photos? Where do you print a book? And we learned all these hard lessons and tried to figure it out. But at the end, when we handed this out to the family, it was incredible to have it finally done. And so our business heads combined to think it was hard and it's super valuable. Maybe there's something here. Maybe there's a business here.
That's fabulous. And you want to describe to me, now you've worked through all your kinks that you've done. So you want to describe how your talented team, I know you have a talented team of interviewers, transcriptionists. This is a big deal now. Writers and designers include a person's best memories through your narrative-centered questions process. So now you have this whole well-orchestrated, well-managed organization to make these beautiful books. So you want to go through your process of how you guys do that?
Yeah, so we learned that we weren't super talented at any of those many roles, but we're pretty good at coordinating other people and bringing together a village to make that happen. So now we have a team of dedicated people in each of those roles. So when we are having interviews with these storytellers, we have amazing interviewers asking those questions and asking questions, beyond just where did you go to elementary school? Then where did you go to high school? The questions we really try to dig in and find the stories hiding underneath, ask more interesting questions that can elicit like a memory from further away in your bank that, because I think we all settle into the stories that we tend to tell from time to time, but when you can actually give a little nudge to a different part of the brain and pull up something they haven't said in a while, it's so much richer. So we like to really dig with our questions. And then we have the audio captured, which is a nice export at the end when we're giving everything to the family. So nice to have the audio as well. And I can talk about that with my grandpa too. But then we transcribe those. We write it into a beautiful manuscript, again, with really talented writers. Then we package it all up with photos from the family and their favorite color choices. And that goes to our design team, who then send the version back to the family and they see a digital version. They get to put their edits on it. And then we ship a full color 8x10 like proper book these days. And you can see that's a lot more fulsome. So this might have been about 4 hours of interviews for a book like this. And yeah, with my grandpa's, it was black and white, but now we're like full color, big quote.
And do people work with you to say what colors they want, or do you choose those colors? Wow.
Yeah, so people will usually tell us their favorite color, and it tends to just be beyond like, oh, I like blue. Like the most recent one we did was like, oh, my grandma always wears purple to church on Sundays, and she has everything in her apartment is like this rich red. So when we bring a color palette together, it's usually deeper than just like a one-off favorite color. It's usually got some meaning, or it comes from like that iconic photo that some people have, like the best photo they've ever had, and you pull the hues out from that. So yeah, we get really creative with the color palettes.
And what did you wanted to tell me a little story about your grandfather with the audio?
Oh yeah, just that. Well, we finished his book in probably 2018, and then he passed in 2020. And of course, we like to page through this book, and everyone in the family has a copy. But from time to time, to bring up the old audio clips is another level of visceral memory of him because there's just so much character in someone's voice.
Oh,
You
wow.
can read the words that he said, but then hearing them out loud is awesome. But favorite stories, I got a couple. Here we have his ID card from work from
Oh, wow.
the 40s or so. I go up to him a few years ago and say, "Pop, they spelled your name wrong on your ID card." And he says, "Yeah, well, you were lucky if you got a name at all back then." That was kind of his way of talking and his sense of humor. There's lots here about
How old was he when he passed, Andrew?
he would have been 93.
Oh, wow, he lived a beautiful, fulsome life.
He did, yeah. I have one grandparent left, and I'm 36, so I'm pretty lucky. All my grandparents made about 90 at least.
That's beautiful. Well, that's good news for you,
Yeah, lucky me.
right? What style and tone is used for the stories? I know you use personal photos to enhance them, but you're asking all these questions. Is it the style and tone from the family? Do you guys have or do they choose who they want to represent?
So our I was actually just mentioning how, you want to recall the voice of the person telling the stories. So our goal is to rewrite all the transcripts into a nicely flowing manuscript, but keep the voice, tone, mannerisms, even words that they use so that when you read the page, you should hear their voice in your head a little bit. So we are not ghostwriting, rewriting. It's first person as if they wrote it. And yeah, even like some of the funny little sayings and things should come through in the writing if we hit our goal.
What if a loved one, they want the book for the person, but they've got memory issues or they're hard of hearing or they've got some kind of complication going on? We are dealing with older people.
Yeah, we see that a lot. So for memory issues, sending the questions in advance can help just to cue the memory. And then oftentimes, actually, storytellers like to have a child on the line with them or in the room with them. Just a little bit of like clarification. This also helps with hearing problems and maybe repeating a question out loud. But yeah, I mean, you've joked about being boomer and being hard on yourself about your technology, but I mean, now I'd say not all, but most of our storytellers they know their way around their phone and their laptop a little bit, which is nice.
That's great. And what about if you got two people? Like someone wants to do a story of their parents or whatever. How does that work? So it's not, instead of one person.
Yeah, so we do books about multiple people. There's like a small additional charge for that, but then what we usually do is interview each parent separately about the early part of their life. This is
You
especially
hope what
important.
happens if some of the stories conflict? Do they sometimes
Good
have
question. Yeah, it's funny. Whenever you get a couple telling the story of how they met, there's usually a little bit of a different point of view. That's always fun. But it's also important because a lot of couples you'll have someone who's the talker and one who's the silent type. So if we don't interview them separately, you find
Oh,
one
that's
voice kind of
smart.
fades into the background a little bit. So yeah, we like to give people their own interview time and then bring them together for one or two interviews and just see how their dynamic is. And then on the pages, we print the voices in different colors so you know who gave which answer.
Oh, that's so smart. That's really great. And can clients be as involved or hands off? I do sometimes people just hand it to you and say, just do it. And I know that there are three things that you ask to ensure each project is a success. So tell us about that.
Yeah, we will have people that will send the proof and they'll say, "This looks amazing. I'm so excited, print it." And others will comb through every word for 30,000 words and make little changes all the way through. So, yeah, we give a couple rounds of edits, but people can be as thorough or uninvolved as they choose there. Elements of a successful project, definitely photos. So, getting photos from the same periods of life, providing us with captions and letting us place them in the right order. As I showed you when I opened the book, really brings it to life. A manuscript is great, but yeah, pictures next to the stories are incredible. In our welcome calls, we ask family members, is there any stories we should definitely ask and stories maybe we shouldn't ask about? And people are pretty good about knowing, areas not to get into and then areas that really light people up. So if we can spend lots of time in the areas that people are talking about their passions, then they will, yeah, just provide richer stories.
And you don't visit some of the painful episodes in their lives that they don't want to talk
Right.
about.
Yeah. And you know what? Oftentimes there's a quick bond between the storyteller and our interviewer. And we'll sometimes go there because we're on the topic or we're in the chronological era. And then they'll say, "Can you not print that?" And that's also fine. Uh, but they just find so much value in talking through that by the time they're rolling, they want to talk about it. But you don't always want to print, some of the harder parts of your life. So we can do that too.
Yeah, do your interviewers feel sometimes that they're like psychologists in a way? Like,
Yeah,
hearing some of these
100%.
stories?
Therapists, yeah, and that's a nice thing too, is, like, I think a lot of our storytellers look, usually it's a client purchasing this for their parent. They wanna buy the book for their parent to hear their stories. There's often reluctance from the storyteller, and then it turns out that they end up really enjoying the process. So not only do you get a beautiful book at the end, but I'd say, like, 9 out of 10 times the person really enjoys telling their stories, and half the time that's a surprise to them, and they're like, I was a bit hesitant, but then I really loved talking about my life."
Sounds like in a way, in a really strange way, what you're doing is a bit of healing for the person whose story it is, because you're giving some of them a voice that they never had before.
It can be healing for sure. Yeah. I also find, like, if we go for dinner with our family, the topics of conversation might be politics, sports, traffic, weather. How often do you really take the time to go deep and really ask about someone's childhood, teenage years? And here's the really interesting thing to remember. In your life, all the depth of emotion, all the thought that's rolled through your head for however many years, your parents experienced that depth too, and they've had that whole range of emotion, and you probably haven't asked them about it. So it is pretty special, and people do feel heard in a different kind of way
Mhm.
sometimes. Sometimes no one's ever asked them about
Right.
these
Well, in
stories.
some families, the dynamic is that they don't talk about emotion.
Mhm.
So it feels to me like sometimes you get information that people never talked about, or maybe not were even conscious, but now they're finding this beautiful morsel about their loved one that gives them a
Mhm.
different perspective. So it can be healing on the other side of that also.
100%. Yeah, I like your word perspective there. Like, once you've heard a lifetime's worth of stories from your parent, maybe you see the way they see the world a little bit differently.
Right. And understand where they were coming from when they did that thing that you couldn't stand. Now you kind of understand where they were coming from as opposed to your viewpoint as a kid or whatever, right? And maybe you
Absolutely.
understand it, you can even maybe start to forgive them for whatever
Mhm.
that was, right?
I
No.
love the quote I saw recently, which was like, "Be easy on your parents. Remember that they're living life for the first time too."
Oh,
But
that's beautiful. I love that. That's
yeah,
wonderful. I have to write that one down. That's great. How fast do you complete a book? And what happens if someone is sick and, like, they're afraid that they're gonna cross over
yeah.
before you know it, you know?
So when people come to us with that, we'll see who's available on our team and we will try to get through interviews as quick as we can. So a few weeks ago, somebody did interviews like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 4 back-to-back days, which is pretty quick for us. We usually meet once a week.
Do
People
you do
tend
it
to like
online or do you do it in it can be online too, right?
phone phone or Zoom.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's pretty rare that we happen to have a writer in the same city, so
right.
it's mostly online. But usually it's once a week and people take that time in between to reflect and think about the next questions, but in some cases, to your point, we need to interview as quick as we can, and so we offer that whenever we can pull it off. A book has been done as fast as, like, 2 months, but that requires, like, photos are ready, captions are ready, edits go back and forth really quickly. I'd say, like, 4 to 6 months is a really cushy, comfortable pace, and then some families have become very cushy and comfortable, and their stories are a long-term work in progress, but
They're really getting into it.
yeah, or really letting it sit on the shelf sometimes, but pretty much once there's a deadline, then we work through it with the family and we tend to reach that. The open-ended ones can last a little while.
Do you ever often have people saying, gee, I ordered one copy, but I think I want to give this out to about 45 people or something? Do you do that with people?
Yeah, we do. We do one copy included with the project because a lot of people just need the one. But then we've had, I'd say most families order four, five, six, but a couple of very excited people have ordered them by the hundreds. And I don't know, I think they just sit at their house and they're really popular people and they give them out. And other times they ship them all over the country to their friends. So that's pretty fun.
Yeah.
I think about 200 is the most we've done.
Oh, wow. That's cool, though. What a
Hmm.
great Christmas present, right? Are there any special stories that you've done with No Story Lost that have made a particular impact on you? People's stories that were really pretty amazing, or the results that came from interviewing them that surprised
Hmm.
you?
Yeah, a couple special ones for me. One, because she represents so many people, I think. She said, I'm not sure this is for me. Like, I don't really have any interesting stories. Fast forward, I see the first transcript come through. She talks about living in London during the war and how a bomb came through their roof, through their second story, landed in their living room, didn't explode, and they went to live down the street at the neighbors while the bomb squad came and removed this like unexploded bomb. This is the person with no stories to
No
tell.
stories to tell.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think when you live in your own shoes for a lifetime, everything seems so, of course, to you. But everybody has something interesting from their childhood. And even if you don't have a bomb coming through your house story, it's so meaningful to your kids and grandkids, again, just to know like the sports you played growing up, who your best friends' names were, what your neighborhood smelled like on the way home from school, like these little things, again, that we've never talked about with our family. So she always represents that for me. And then just from like a nerdy history perspective, interviewing so many Americans, I mean, lots of Canadians and Brits and Australians too, but like mid-century history stuff is so cool. Like people being at a Kennedy rally and stuff really puts you into the decades that they were in their 20s for. So I love hearing about, old college stories or yeah, Americana like that.
You're really getting a lot of history. So it's amazing. And if these people have passed and people want, I mean, you have this thing called memorial books.
Hmm.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, we're working on a few right now. We're wrapping up a big one where we had 15 or 16 people contribute to a memorial book for a man who passed away in his 30s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I mean, it was pretty tragic, and it's been slow for obvious reasons because I think it's been quite hard for the family to work through that process and to be ready to talk about it and interview about it. Like, not only talk about it to a close friend about how you're feeling, but to actually, like, revisit it all. So, yeah, we in some cases, it's situations like that where it's, like, the community around the person coming together to remember them and honor them. In other cases, it's somebody who finds out about us and, they lost their one parent 5 years ago and their other parent's still around and they wanna learn everything they have about their parent who's still with them and about the parent who's lost. So it can be beautiful to, yeah, ask a few siblings and a spouse to just come and share stories about the person they recently lost and help them live on a little bit that way.
I think that's so wonderful. And especially like in the case of a young person who passes and the whole family it gets to have this so that the person is alive in their
Mhm.
homes always. I think that's wonderful. And now
Mhm.
I know I'm going to ask you about a book you authored called
Mhm.
Die Gallantly.
Yeah,
And you explore what it means to live a meaningful life to Andrew. And
totally.
I know that through No Story Lost, you've gathered personal reflections from people nearing their final moments. And I was fascinated when I read Die Gallantly because in it you state that EMTs often hear final thoughts centered on forgiveness, remembrance, and a longing for purpose, while nurses witness deeper regrets, wishing a person had
Mhm.
lived more authentically, loved more fully, embraced happiness without fear. Do you feel these reflections are universal truths? Does that come through in the stories when people are talking about their life stories and all? And do they express regrets like this in your No Story Lost books?
So, yeah, lots to say here. Thanks for the question. There's a blog post about this on our website if people are curious, and I've summarized what the two people said. So, yeah, one of them is an EMT person who would show up on scene, maybe in the final moments of someone's life when they're not expecting to go. It's maybe a car accident or something. And they would ask him, like, will you remember me? Will my family forgive me? And then, like you said, the final one of his three big ones was, did their life have meaning? So they needed to know that their life wasn't just wasted on
And they're
minutia.
asking the stranger because it's in the last moment of their life.
Maybe the only person they'll see.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a great TED talk, that one. And then the nurses ones are usually more of a perspective of people who maybe know they're in their final moments. They're closer to the end of their life. I think she was a palliative nurse. So that might be a little bit more of a like slower, reflective, thinking back on their life type of a feeling. And those ones I would say we tend to hear a bit closer to because we aren't interviewing people in trauma usually. It's sort of more so just a reflective part of their life. But yeah, I would say the ones that we see come through that are the same as the nurse would be letting yourself be happier. I wish I had let myself be happier or not worked so hard. And then the courage to live a life true to yourself, not the life others expected of me. And then another one that's maybe not in the nurses one, the most common one I see is just like, it's all about family. It's all about love. That's what our biggest reflection that we hear is.
And then on spiritual terms, that's be loving and kind to everyone, which I got when they pulled me out of my car.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about what you're saying is how many people are not conscious to live their lives in a loving way with kindness. And then they have these regrets later in life. Do you ever ask them when you're doing these memorial books or the books for the people who are still around, do you have any regrets that you'd like to express? Do you ever go there?
We usually touch on that one unless we've kind of been warned not to. Yeah. And the recent ones I've seen in books as I'm like poking my head or editing them is about living a life true to myself. So not living the life your parents want for you, not the one your spouse wants for you. I mean, that's the wisdom we're being given from people looking back with no time to change it. So people who still have years to live, it's all about hearing that and saying like, what do I truly want to do? What do I want to experience in this life? Where do I want to go? What sort of career do I want to have? Truly me, like what do I actually want?
Well, look what
That's
happened
the
to
lesson.
you. I mean, you are not living this, you really found your purpose. Obviously, because you had, for me, this is just my opinion, my perception. You're altruistic. You started a charity, a philanthropy. You started a not-for-profit. So you have this big heart, and you were going to be like dealing with numbers your whole life. You were with Deloitte,
Hmm.
right? And
Hmm.
look what happened here. So you hopefully will not have any regrets. You really made a contribution.
That's the goal. Yeah.
It-
We looked ahead at our careers. We saw the 40-year paths and we said we could do it. We're lucky to have the opportunity, but we could make a positive impact with our careers instead. We could still do business. We could still run businesses, but we could do so in a way that hopefully makes the world better. And so at the cost of other things, that's what we want to dedicate some time to. So
It's wonderful.
first decade and a half of our career, at least so far, is in that direction.
It's wonderful. And do you want to tell us about what you feel the profound role that story? I'm trying to ask you, what is the role storytelling plays in grief healing and remembrance? I'm sure that you see that all the time.
Yes, of course. Multiple ways. Yeah. Yeah. I'm remembering a quote from a book called Die with Zero, another book with the word die in it. Yeah. And it says, like, not only do we retire on our savings, but we retire on our memories. So towards the end of our life, we're looking back. And one of the things that provides us with so much value is what we do in life. And that's our memories and that's our stories. It's the stories we're going to tell to our friends, to reminisce, to pass on to the next generation, our advice. It all comes from our life experience. really all that we have. And then once we're gone, our loved ones' memories with us and stories with us is mostly all that there is left of us, right? There's the quote too that's like, you die twice. Like, your first death is when you die, and your second death is when the last person says your name, or in another sense, like the last person like talks about you or reminisces about you and that sort of thing. So, I mean, look at you telling Saul's story and speaking about him almost 30 years later, keeping his name alive, keeping his stories alive. Yeah.
It's true. And extending in a way like you're doing, extending the goodness to other people and sharing.
Oh, yeah.
Today I get to meet Andrew because of this story that I had. And,
Yeah.
right, I know you have a promo that you're offering to our
Yeah.
wonderful audience on Grief and Rebirth podcast. Would you like to tell them about that? And we will have links and all of that.
Yeah, you can put the code in the show notes. I believe it's Irene, but I can check that. You can correct me if you've got it. But yeah, we, like I said, do one printed copy of the book with every package. But with this code, you'll get 2 extra copies of your book printed for free. So a copy to share with another family member or 2.
Sounds like a great deal to me. And what is the Andrew Hall tip for finding joy in life?
Yeah. So I think we touched on my book quickly. Maybe we touched on Stoicism in our introduction. But yeah, the biggest thing that has caused me to find more joy and appreciation in life is the Stoic principles, Stoicism. There's an incredible book called A Guide to the Good Life, all about the Greek and Roman Stoics. And there's a series of exercises and things to do, which are primarily gratitude practices. So things like knowing that you're going to be gone someday. Another one is the quote that's like, everything you have is on loan to you from, they call it from fortune. So whether you're religious or whoever you want to call it, it's given to you, but it's on loan and it can be taken back anytime. So that's an opportunity to look around at everything you have and just be thankful for it and know that, okay, I have this right now and it's on loan right now and I'm going to be thankful for it while I have it. And who knows?
That's a beautiful way to look at life, Andrew.
Yeah. I'd say that all the practices in that book have like raised my happiness floor to a higher level at any given time. So there's still ups and downs. It's not a silver bullet, but that sets a really good baseline for just being so thankful for every day and everything in your life and every person in your life.
That's a very elevated way to look at life, by the way. It's really high vibe. You're living a high vibe life. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
You know, Andrew, no story lost is surely a gift beyond measure. The chance to preserve the voices, wisdom, and love of those who matter most, ensuring their presence is never lost to time. Through its pages, their spirit is kept alive, allowing their presence to be felt once more, to hear their laughter, treasure their wisdom, and hold close their precious pivotal moments. From my heart, I thank you for this wonderful conversation and for the incredible work you're doing to bring peace, remembrance, and lasting connection to so many people, ensuring that no story is ever truly lost, only carried forward, cherished, and kept close forever. Thank you so much, Andrew, for this lovely interview and many blessings.
That was beautiful. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. As I like to say, to be continued. Thanks for tuning in to Grief and Rebirth. Remember, you can dive deeper into everything we've discussed by checking out the show notes and all past episodes at ireneweinberg.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Irene S. Weinberg on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and wherever you love to hang out online. Plus, we're on YouTube, so be sure to subscribe and never miss a video. For those of you listening, you'll find links to my 2 books, Good to the Last Drop and They Serve Bagels in Heaven, in the show notes. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see those books listed right above, so don't miss out. And here comes a special treat. If you sign up for Audible as a first-time user using my link, which you can find in the show notes. You can get They Serve Bagels in Heaven for free. And finally, people often ask me what I read, what I use, and what I recommend for healing and self-care. So I've carefully curated a compilation of those items to share with you. You can head over to kit.co/grief and rebirth to check them out. Thanks again for tuning in, and until next time, many blessings.